Hello, I'm Michael for GameWatcher.com and welcome to our first impressions of Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Martyr, the upcoming action RPG based in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, in development currently by Neocore Games. Neocore Games have somewhat of a pedigree in the action RPG genre, considering that they were responsible for the franchise of the incredible Adventures of Van Helsing games. Inquisitor Martyr, on the other hand, is set to be one of their most ambitious projects to date, and it has been coming for quite some time with a few delays here and there. Now, the game is centered around the idea that you play as an Inquisitor in the 41st millennium, and your job is to destroy evil within the Imperium. The game itself is based in a single sector of space, which is the Caligari sector, and it's open world in the sense that you can travel around this sector, visit the different solar systems, go into the various planets and complete missions and objectives on each planet. Now, where the game starts to get ambitious is in the fact that, one, it has procedural map generation. Two, it also has, alongside a main story campaign, it'll have a mini campaigns which will be based, and essentially they will be randomly generated as well. They will be based all around the sector, and you'll be able to just pick them up as side missions, and it will randomly generate you a mini campaign. Now, this is set to have stories within it in the mini campaigns, but there is a little bit of concern because random generation missions, especially when it comes to story, tend not to go so well in many video games. And to be able to pull this off with any degree of good polish and execution, Neocore certainly have their work cut out for them. Now, in terms of combat, currently in the early access version of the game, which is of course the early alpha, the game is very bare bones and it is very buggy, and technically, in terms of performance and stability, it is an absolute mess. Currently in the game, all you're able to do is really experience a little bit of the combat, a little bit of the progression in terms of item progression, but other than that, there's very little to see currently. In terms of what's there is promising. There's certainly the trappings of a great game somewhere in there. Currently though, it is very much too early to tell on what this will end up being, considering that the visuals, performance and the overall stability of the game is absolutely down the pan at the moment. It's very difficult to tell what the overall product will end up being like at this stage. It's certainly got enough there at the moment not to really invest into, but it's got enough into there to give you a little slight glimmer of hope, in the sense of this game could potentially be one of the best Warhammer 40k games to date if the execution is top notch and if the end product is ultimately high quality. This is a very ambitious project. Having an open world action RPG is one thing, but having a persistent universe like they've claimed to have, and being able to pull off random generation and of course story generation within that, to be able to pull that off at a really high quality level, to be able to really immerse players within a randomly generated story, is going to be difficult at best, and it'll be interesting to see whether they pull that off with any degree of success. Now, of course, there's also the situation of the multiplayer. Now, the game is going to feature 4-person co-op, and you'll be able to take on world events that will be dotted around the galaxy. On top of that, you'll be able to set up your own inquisitorial clans, so you'll be able to play with your friends at any given time. So in addition to the single player story mode, in addition to the various mini campaigns, in addition to the cooperative gameplay for up to 4 players, you also have fortresses. Now, the developers have been talking about fortresses for some time, and essentially they are player housing. You'll be able to customize and defend your own fortress. You'll be able to build it up, develop it as your own. You'll be able to, kit it out with various things, and it will be a way for players to not only invest in their environments but also invest in their characters as well. Now, the character progression itself is fairly solid thus far from what we've seen of the early alpha. There's very little there, but from what I've seen, there's going to be plenty to choose from when it comes down to it. There's a multitude of different skill trees to get involved in depending on what playstyle you want to take your Inquisitor down, whether it be melee combat or ranged combat. And then you also have the various item progressions, such as, making sure that you equip better and better loot. And you can gain loot from a selection of ways, including enemy drops and the store. Even in this early alpha, the combat is also shaping up quite nicely, particularly the melee combat. The animations look like that they have promise, as well as the blood and gore and trademark grim darkness of the Warhammer 40k franchise. The two things that I really enjoy about the combat is, one, the indestructible environments, which is a really nice touch and helps the game feel more immersive, and of course the implementation of a cover system, which is certainly required in a Warhammer 40k game, given that there's going to be a lot of ranged combat. That being said, there's still plenty of work to do with the combat. I don't think the AI is anywhere near where it needs to be engaging. The level design, even though it's randomly generated, needs to be in a better situated place and needs to flow better and needs to allow for things like exploration, hidden secrets, that kind of thing. And the way that the enemies are dotted out currently, they are just dotted out in little gangs where you can just go through the level and just take down gang after gang after gang, and it needs to be a little bit more natural and authentic. This game can't end up having just groups of enemies grouped up on a map. That's very boring and doesn't really reflect how much people love the Warhammer 40k universe. What needs to happen is that you need to have levels where you feel like this is a living world. So, if you're going to take down a chaos threat within the Caligari sector itself, then why not, as you go through the map, have gangs of enemies, some trying to summon daemons, or maybe they're destroying the actual building that they're in, or killing civilians, or have them actually do something when you're attacking them or come up on them, rather than just stand around waiting for you. One of the things that we haven't heard about is the main story and how that is going to play out, and it's something that has me a little bit concerned, given that the game is about you being an Inquisitor. And one of the most important parts in the Warhammer lore about being Inquisitor is actually being an investigator, is actually finding out what is going on, interrogating people, making difficult choices. And I hope that this game puts those choices in play within the storyline itself. So, do I have to save this person, or do I condemn them to death? Do I do this? Do I do that? And if this game doesn't have many choice or consequences, I think that is going to be a little bit of a letdown for Warhammer 40k fans, especially being in the shoes of an Inquisitor who is the ultimate power, judge, jury and executioner when it comes to matters of state. Overall, this game certainly has a massive amount of potential to be a very big success. However, it is far too early to tell, and especially given its current state of pretty much pre-alpha at this stage, it's far too early to tell what the end product will even look like. There's a lot that could go right here, but there's also a lot that could go very, very wrong. And ultimately, only time will tell whether it becomes one of the greatest Warhammer 40k games to date, or it joins the large pile and the ever-growing pile of games that fail to live up to the franchise. And that is our first impressions of Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Martyr. Thanks for watching. Head on over to GameWatcher.com for more.